Hello again, fourth graders, and welcome to our 13th session of Unit 3, Bringing History to Life. Today for our Writer's Workshop, we're going to be focusing on text features, which help others and the readers understand important information because they are definitely eye-popping items. Benjamin Franklin was a leading patriot and a famous inventor. One of his famous inventions was bifocal glasses, glasses that are split in half, right in the middle of the lenses, so that a person sees far away out of the top half and sees close up out of the bottom half. Ben Franklin wrote a letter to his friend George Whately to explain how bifocals worked because he wanted George to sell them. Ben realized words wouldn't do the trick, so he drew a picture in the middle of his letter, adding labels to point out the important features. Now, informational texts rely on images and on text features of all sorts to help readers understand and read informational texts. It's important to have those images and text features. What are some text features you've seen in nonfiction books and magazines? Think about that for a moment. They're everywhere in our nonfiction material. Well, the idea of filling your pages with these text features sounds cool, but you must also be careful before piling all of that onto every page of your book. We don't need to have a conglomeration of captions, maps, text boxes, subtitles, diagrams, timelines. It really can be distracting if it's too much, but used sparingly, they can be very impactful. Writers used text features purposefully. They think about the most important information and ideas that they're trying to convey in a chapter or a section, and they use text features to highlight what they're really trying to say. Now, when informational writers get ready to add text features, they don't just slap on any old picture or a timeline or a text box or diagram that is somewhat connected to what is on the page. No, they study that part of their writing carefully and think, what am I trying to say here? What's the most important information I'm trying to teach? Are there ideas I have about the information that I really want readers to know? Now, after answering those questions, the writer can think, what text features could I use to pop out that information so I highlight the important stuff for my readers? What are the most important information and ideas in this section? What is this part really about? I'll read it. It is a little bit blurry. That is just how it was run off here for this particular slide. So it is not your computer. Just understand that this is how it is presented. One of the first things that happened after the massacre was that patriots like Paul Revere wanted to convince people that the British soldiers were at fault. There was lots of propaganda being published that was trying to convince people that the soldiers killed people on purpose. For example, Paul Revere did an etching that showed the soldiers shooting right at innocent people. He did this to make people angry enough to want to fight the British. So this part is really about propaganda, and the patriots depicted or showed the events of the Boston Massacre as even worse than they were to stir up anger toward the British. Paul Revere's etching that showed soldiers firing right at innocent people was one example. It wasn't accurate, but was instead propaganda. Now, people used art and writing to make what happened that day feel like a massacre, when it wasn't really. Patriots used propaganda, that's the word for it, to stir emotions up against the British. Maybe we can call this part the Patriots' propaganda stirs anger against British. Whenever you write, you can use text features such as headings to help readers understand the most important information and ideas you are teaching on that page. What other text features can we include in this section besides a heading? Here are some examples that could be used in this section. Maybe some of you can use some of these in your own writing. Things like captions, bolded words, perhaps a text box, image of Paul Revere, if you were doing Paul Revere, with the etching, with a caption that might say, Paul Revere's etching shows the propaganda patriots used to make people turn against Britain. You might have a different image, obviously, for your second topic. This is what it might look like. These text features might look like this in this particular section. You can see a timeline, an etching picture, definition of propaganda, and so on. Yesterday we talked about how you can act like a tour guide. And as a tour guide for your readers, you're setting them up for how each chapter will go. And remember that you can add text features to your chapters. These chapters are rough drafts, so later you can worry about making the visual layout of the paper work. So really, you might want to figure out today and determine which text features you can use for your particular parts of your writing. So I'm going to challenge you today to think about, like we did yesterday, the introduction and conclusion, but today focusing more on the text features. And how can you include these in your writing? If you have more writing to do, obviously continue that the chapter writing that you need to finish. But if you're ready for today's text feature ideas, go ahead and do a rough sketch of where some of these might go. Where could I include some important text features? Captions, timeline, for example, bold print in your writing. So that's your challenge today, writers. Go ahead and work on your text features and where you would include those in your writing. If you're able to draw them, that would be maybe on separate paper, because we'll be including that in the final writing that you'll be holding up to the teacher so that he or she can follow what you did. So text features today is what we are working on. Go ahead and try to include some of these special features in your chapter writing today. All right, get started.